Go on, Sergeant, you must have some more men to protest somewhere. Hello? Yes, Kitchener has done a tremendous job. Britain needs a bigger army, and that is exactly what he'll be getting.
In the first weekend of the war, 100 men signed up to join the British Armed Forces every hour. And by the end of 1914, nearly 1.2 million men had joined. But why?
Well, 54 million posters have been issued, 8 million letters sent, 12,000 meetings held, and 20,000 speeches given by military personnel, myself included. Each one of them encouraging men to sign up and fight for their king and country.
Well, that will be one reason.
Yes, well, I do have a queue outside my office door, stretching right to the end of the street. I'm telling you, Basil, men are proud to fight for the king and country, and it is quite a sight to see.
At the start of the war, only men aged between 18 and 41 could become soldiers. But I'm sure I just saw a whole lot of boys outside planning on lying about their ages. They looked to be as young as 13 or 14.
Sorry, Basil, must go, old chap. There seems to be a strangely dressed recruit in my office. Bye-bye.
Oh,
Boy? Yes, we'll go with boy, we need the numbers.
Oh, no, I'm not here to join. I'm just here to learn more about life in the trenches.
Well, there is absolutely no better way to learn about life in the trenches than going there and fighting yourself. Follow me. Come on, stand here.
What are you doing?
Oh, don't worry, I'm just making sure you meet the height restrictions. Excellent, yes. You'll be home by Christmas, don't worry. Right, let me go and get my clipboard.
Sadly, what Kitchener's recruits didn't know was that they wouldn't be home by Christmas 1914, or 1915, 16, or 17. In fact, many of them wouldn't return home at all. I'm off today to the Tank Museum in Bovington, Dorset, to find out what life was really like in the trenches in World War I. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Now, departing on the train to France, men received quite the send-off, with huge crowds gathering on the streets to wave off their loved ones and show their support. But it wasn't just the men heading over. Women were heading over too, to join as nurses. Oh, that's my stop. I'm meeting Claire, Education Officer here at the Tank Museum, and my guide and guru for the day. So Claire, I take it women weren't allowed to enlist as soldiers during World War I?
They weren't, no, but there was lots of other things that they could do to help the war effort. So they could work on farms, they could work in factories making ammunition, and they could also be VAD nurses.
What's a VAD nurse?
So VAD stands for Voluntary Aid Detachment Nurse, and they would work in base hospitals, they would also work in convalescence homes, looking after the soldiers and getting them ready for going back to war. Do you want to train as one and see how you get on?
Yes, go on.
Here you go.
Let's do this. Okay, so this uniform feels rather feminine and lovely, but I don't imagine this was a lovely job, right?
Unfortunately not, no. So the women thought the same as the men, that they were going on this big adventure. But when they finally got there, they realised the harsh realities of it all. They had to work long hours, 14 hours or more, and then they had to sleep on uncomfortable camp beds, and they always had to look fresh and ready for duty. So no makeup, no long nails, and they always had to be prepared with scissors, safety pin, and a pencil.
Right, so how did they treat all of these injuries?
Well, there was lots of medical equipment that they would use. Do you want to come and see some?
Yes.
Come on. So, medicine in World War I had to develop very quickly because of the amount of soldiers that were suddenly becoming injured. So, first of all, we've got a shrapnel shell. Do you want to have a feel? Feel how heavy it is?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really heavy. Okay.
So inside the shrapnel shell, you've got little tiny balls of metal that would rain down on top of the trenches onto the men's heads. So Marie Curie came up with the X-ray machine during World War I to actually find where in the body these little balls were, because the only other way was sort of sticking a knife in and trying to find it that way, and that could do a lot of damage. If the wound got really infected, then you would have to use a bone saw to cut off the soldier's limb.
Oh, right, okay, you can have that back now.
And then finally, we've got a German stick grenade. So this was actually nicknamed the potato masher by the British, but in actual fact, it would explode in people's faces and cause lots of facial injuries. So plastic surgery also came on leaps and bounds during World War I.
Wow. So what was life like for the soldiers that they were treating?
Well, here at the Tank Museum, we've actually got a reconstructed trench. Do you want to come and have a look?
So I'm an infantry soldier now. Tell me, what am I wearing?
So you are wearing a jacket made of a material called serge. The good thing about serge is it's quick, cheap and easy to mass produce, but it doesn't feel very nice. How does it feel against your skin?
It's really itchy.
So what the soldiers used to do is they'd get a razor and shave the back of the collar so it's not quite so itchy against the back of their necks. Does it look waterproof?
No.
No, it doesn't. And there's not many places to go in a trench to get dry either. You'd also not be alone in there. You'd have lots of lice running around in there with you as well. And they were called chats. And in the evening, the soldiers would sit and pick the chats off of each other, a bit like monkeys. And they call it chatting. And we still use chatting as a word now for having a conversation.
No way, that's where it comes from.
Yes, exactly. How does the webbing feel?
Really heavy, really heavy.
So you'd have to carry all of that and your weapon. There would be an awful lot for you to carry.
I have to say, this hat doesn't feel like it's going to give me much protection from the shrapnel that you just showed me.
So at the beginning of the war, this is what you would have worn. By 1915, you would then have a Brodie helmet. So do you want to do a swapsy?
I have to say, it feels like it's going to fall off, actually.
Yeah, and they're really heavy as well.
Yeah.
But it would give you some protection against those shrapnel shells. Unfortunately, it's not bulletproof.
So what other problems were they facing in the trenches?
So, as you can imagine, it would get really, really muddy as well. So they had to walk on duck boards, which would lift them up from the bottom of the trenches to stop their feet from getting wet. So if they got wet, they then got a little bit wrinkly, and then they would go mouldy, and then they would go black and need to be chopped off with that bone saw that we saw earlier. Are you ready for your first day as an infantry soldier?
No, I don't think I am. 5 a.m. stand to arms, meaning to be on high alert for enemy attack, half an hour before dawn. 6 a.m. stand down, half an hour after dawn. 7 a.m. breakfast, usually bacon and tea. 8 a.m. onwards, tidy trench and clean weapons. Noon, dinner. After dinner, downtime, chatting and nap time. 5 p.m. tea. 6 p.m. stand to arms, half an hour before dusk. 7 p.m. stand down, half an hour after dusk. Then more work, patrols, digging trenches and putting up barbed wire. And that's me done for the day. Even though this is just a reproduction, and I know it's not real, it's so well done and so immersive that walking through these trenches makes me feel uneasy and uncomfortable. I can only imagine the fear these soldiers must have been living with, day in and day out. So Claire, you've got the British with trenches on one side, the Germans with trenches on the other side, and in the middle you've got this vast empty space that became known as no man's land.
Exactly. And once you step into no man's land, you've got no protection against the German machine guns.
So surely there's a bit of a stalemate, right? Both sides sitting in their trenches, not really being able to get to the other side. What do?
Well, the British, we came up with some new technologies, and luckily we've got lots of examples here at the Tank Museum. Do you want to follow me and see some?
The tank. Finally, the British had come up with a way of getting across the battlefield. Cars were unsuitable because they couldn't get across the muddy ground, but tanks successfully managed to stop soldiers from being caught by barbed wire and provided some protection from enemy fire. So Claire, tell me, what do we have here?
So, this tank is called the Mark I. It's the first type of tank ever to be used in battle on the 15th of September 1916. It carried 8 men and it went around 3 miles an hour, so about walking pace. Do you want to have a go at being a tank gunner?
Yes, go on.
Come on. So, here we are inside our tank, and you are the role of the gunner. So what you would have to do is use your whole body weight to move this big 6-pounder gun around. Now you would have a helper called a loader, and they would load the 6-pounder shell into the gun. Once you've fired it, the empty shell case would then fly outside the back of the gun and into the tank, and you'd have lots of these rolling around on the floor.
So when I was a gunner on board the Golden Hind, I got a nasty shock when I asked about the toilet. What's the toilet situation in here?
This is your toilet. Number 1s and number 2s.
Right, so no better then. See you later. So there were only 2 of us in there, and yet it still felt cramped, claustrophobic and unpleasant. I can't begin to imagine the conditions these men were working in. Poor sanitation, 50-degree heat, and the terrifying knowledge that you only had 7 seconds to evacuate all 8 of you. Claire, thank you so much for taking me through these roles today.
You are more than welcome.
Wow, what an experience. I came here today wanting to find out about life in the trenches. And the truth is, I will never truly know. And for that, I feel very lucky. But coming here today, I've been given a valuable glimpse. I learnt about the brave and compassionate women volunteering as VAD nurses. I learnt about the soldiers and the difficult, uncomfortable and terrifying situations they worked in. And I learnt about the tanks and the incredible contribution they played in ending the war. But as well as this, I also learnt about the remarkable inventions that came about because of the war. Yes, it is during times of war that we see the worst of humankind. But it is also during these times that we see people coming together to create extraordinary inventions and advancements in medicine and machinery. All of those who served in World War I were faced with a terrible situation. But we can all learn from the bravery, endurance and inventiveness today.